would you get it out?
That's the thing. There actually are a few people with floppy drives.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining. We're talking about cybersecurity recruiting today. I've got an amazing panel up here ready to talk about the do's and don'ts of cybersecurity recruiting. My name is Dan Waddell. I'm a senior vice president for a small cybersecurity boutique firm in Arlington, Virginia called Zenith, and I'm also the president of the local ISC² Northern Virginia chapter. Before I begin, I want to thank Sophia, Patrick, and the entire volunteer staff for BSides. And let's give everybody a round of applause. As someone that put on pretty big events for ISC² in my former role, it takes a lot, and I know that without the passion and the volunteerism of the crew, these types of events don't happen. So appreciate all the support. Just a little bit of background on me, and I want to let the ladies kind of drive the discussion here. Now that I'm kind of back in the consulting game, cybersecurity recruiting is an unbelievably unappreciated job most of the time. A lot of folks don't appreciate the effort that our recruiters put forth each and every day. I've got a team of recruiters. Without them, I don't know what I would do. There's not enough cybersecurity talent out there today. I've got my 13-year-old son here. Hopefully he'll be joining the ranks here pretty soon of cybersecurity professionals. But again, I just want to thank all the work that the recruiters do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have each panelist introduce themselves. Get a lot of feedback here. Let me see if I can. There we go. Karen, we'll go ahead and start with you. We'll just kind of go around. Just introduce yourself, maybe talk a little bit about some of the specific cybersecurity roles that you're looking to fill, and maybe one thing about you that you'd like the crew to know.
Yeah, it's your mic.
Is it that one?
I'll hold it over here. And I'm supposed to stand up. So I'm Karen Stig. It's great to be here and see you all out here. I work for Booz Allen. I have been leading our cybersecurity talent programs for the last 3 years. And I think why that's important to share that recruiting, it's a really important effort that we're all going under right now. And why I think it's important to tie that to the other programs, because there are not enough people at all. And so we really have to expand our scope in terms of how we describe the type of talent that we're looking for, the roles that we have, and really the skills that people can have to really make that either expand what they know in cyber or entry into cyber. So I think it's really important to tie learning and development, experiences and things like that. So we look at the whole breadth at Booz Allen. And we look for people across the spectrum, from soft skills, policy, to highly, highly technical skills. So it really is a broad spectrum. I think the other important thing is that when we talk about cyber, I think it's how we really define cyber. And, the way that Booz Allen looks at our capabilities, whether it's technology or analytics, cyber itself, there's many, many places for cyber to show up in those different capabilities. So again, it's not just trying to put cyber in the box, and we're really making sure that we're talking about it at a level that really gets to your interests and skills and the things that would make you good in this field.
There you go. Hi, I'm Sabrina Iacarus, and I am the recruitment lead for Endgame. So we're a small cybersecurity startup in Arlington, and we generally hire software engineers and security researchers. That tends to be our bread and butter. Thanks.
So my name's Kathleen Smith, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at clearjobs.net and cybersecjobs.com. We're a job board, job fair company. A lot of people don't understand that job boards and job fairs are still tools that a lot of employers use to find their candidates. And I'm actually one of those people that does not think that we have a workforce challenge, that we don't have a shortage, because every single con that I go to, I meet hundreds of people who are looking for jobs and are having a very difficult time finding jobs. I think we have a communication problem and a definition problem of what careers are, what cyber is, what information security is. I'm also the president of Recruit DC, where we work here in the Washington DC area to bring best practices to recruiters so that recruiters are constantly learning, because recruiters actually don't go to school to learn how to recruit, and that's a big problem. We're not doing enough training within recruiting to help recruiters. So with that, I'd like to introduce two of my board members who are also on the panel. Susie? Here.
Thank you. Hello. My name is Susie Greco. I work for my own company, SG2 Recruiting, and we support a variety of different companies throughout the DC metropolitan area. So I'm not just representing one company, but many. I'm also here to represent the recruiters who both work from the corporate side as well as from the agency side, so to help you address any questions you have with the types of recruiters you may be engaging over the course of your job search. No?
And I'm Mo Hutt, and I'm also on the Recruit DC board with these two ladies. I have been recruiting in the DC metro area for almost 20 years now. I currently work for Suntiva. It's a small business transformation company in the DC area. Everything from communications to cyber, so broad scope of skill sets that I recruit for.
I am Kirsten Renner. I'm the Director of Recruiting at Novetta, which is a big data analytics cybersecurity company. I hate the word cyber. I don't use it. I'm not recruiting for it. I'm looking for developers. I'm looking for security researchers, and everything in between. What Endgame said. And I also agree, and I've written about this, I've blogged about this, that there is not a shortage of talent. We need good matchmakers, and we need people to just help find their own individual road maps that make sense for them. So.
Awesome. Okay, so what we're going to do, we've got some questions here that we'll ask, and again, really informal. I'll toss it over to the group here. Please jump in and chime in with your comments, and then I do want to leave a little bit of time at the end for questions from you out there. Looking over these questions, I kind of wanted to start with one really short question to really get some good feedback from you. What drives you nuts on a resume? What drives you nuts? Kathleen's jumping at it.
I can do about 10 of them. Don't PDF your resume, please. Someone out there has been telling people to PDF their resume, and everyone will tell you, we can't search for your resume if you PDF it. I understand. I mean, some ATSs can. Most of them can't. This is something really basic. I know that a lot of professionals have been messed over by sort of a really corrupt recruiter or agency who's gone in and changed their resume, and then they got really mad, and so that they went back and they PDF'd it. The other thing that drives me nuts, and I actually did a survey on Facebook and Twitter about this, the grid. The grid that is, you decide that you want to put your technical skills and your certifications in sort of a table and a grid. That gets messed up when it gets scanned into any kind of ATS, so please don't do that. Ladies, who else has a...
I have a long litany of grapes, too. So grammatical errors and spell check. You'd be surprised how many people just don't bother running it and double-checking their resume. 10-page resumes. Please don't do that. People lose interest after the first 2 pages. Maybe the first, depending on who's reading it. What else? Technical skills. So I think a lot of people like to list every technology they've ever touched in their either short or long career. Let's be honest, you only use or you're only proficient with a certain amount of technology. That's what you should probably put on your resume, because when you list everything, hiring managers especially will think that you know something about that particular technology.
That's a great point. I actually saw Windows 95 on a resume this week. Somebody put Windows 95 on a resume. It's like, ooh, okay.
I'm going to throw out there, it may not apply to all of you, but resumes that are written from a functional perspective as opposed to chronological. If you're going to make me work to figure out when you did those exercises or when you did that technology, I'm going to just flip the page and go to the next candidate.
I guess all of that. I was actually on a panel that Kathleen was moderating last week, a couple days ago. What state are we in? And the PDF thing came up on that same note, and for that same reason, you want the data, you want the information to be ingestible by the systems. Imagine that all of us have resume fatigue midway through the day. We've seen a lot of them. You've got 3 to 5 seconds, in my opinion, to get me to keep reading. So please, right away, and we'll get more into this, I think, soon, but tell me, I'm a this, and I want to be a that. And it's really that basic. Headline, bottom line. Please don't tell me your whole life story. They'll be the good recruiters are going to get that information out of you when we get to the next level. But make the data ingestible. Even if you if you make a text box, all of a sudden it just disappeared. It became a picture. So use a table, actually, if you must see a box around something. That's the only way to keep the data ingestible. So.
Good. Okay. So we've talked about some negatives, so let's switch it up a little bit and let's maybe focus on some positives. So think back of an example of something that a job seeker has done and their interaction with you that really super impressed you.
Okay, so I'm a bit of a Pollyanna, so I don't have pet peeves over resumes. I'm just happy to talk to anyone that has a skill set that I need, so I don't care, really. However, I will say this. One thing that has helped me specifically, LinkedIn, I know there's complaints where we contact you because there's a skill set, perhaps it's Windows 95 that you haven't touched in a really long time, but it's still in your profile, so we see it and we email you. However, what I have found recently that's been helpful is in the summary section. I just had a guy 2 weeks ago who put in a summary, I don't want to do this, recruiter, don't call me for this. And he was very specific, and I was able to ascertain he was not a good fit for my position. I sent him a note, I was like, hey, you saved me like an hour, thanks. And we've been talking ever since. He's not a fit for this position, but I will eventually get him because that was awesome.
Good advice.
To present yourself in a way, tell a story. You know, talk about what you're interested in terms of how it applies to what you've done, and really engage and lead with that, opposed to making the recruiter dig for it. Back to the point of whether you list it on a resume or open it up in the conversation, is really draw out what you're interested in and why you are qualified to do that.
I think one thing is, or two things. One, really research the company and the position. I mean, don't just sit there in passive mode and have them ask all the questions and then you sort of mix up the name of the company because you haven't really done the background before the phone interview to know that you're talking to General Dynamics rather than Dynetics. Really understand that, a lot of people hate recruiters. There's that Twitter account, shit recruiters say, so it's really good to badmouth recruiters. But at the same time, if you guys don't bring your A game to understanding what the company is that you're interviewing with, the kind of position, and even if you're not interested, go through the exercise. But after you've gone through the exercise, write a thank you note. All of these people work really long hours, and the fact that they took the time to answer your questions, to find you, because everyone's sitting here saying, no one's calling me, but if they're calling you and they've given you a great interview, they've helped you, they've done something, differentiate yourself by writing just a quick email. It was really great to talk about the Olympics, and yes, I agreed with you about such and such a call. Hey, this is something that I forgot in our interview. I wanted to give this additional bit of information to you. So you remembered the recruiter, you remembered the conversation, and you made a further defining mark as to why you're better than any other candidate.
Drawing a blank right now.
I'll make it really fast, I promise. One of the things that impressed me recently that someone did was they realized midway through, or part of the way through.
Yep, there we go.
Hello. It ended up being actually a thread on Twitter. You think I need to move over?
Yeah, the mic.
That mic, yeah. They're like magnets in that way. Them noticing right away that this wasn't going to be a fit for them and why, and then them saying, you know what, but I know this person. And then it ended up turning into a mutually beneficial situation. Not only did they end up referring somebody else that would have been a better fit, even though I could have made them fit into the position, and then I ended up referring them to somebody else. So everyone that does this, I promise, we don't do it because we went to school for it. We don't do it because we dreamed of it when we were little girls. We do this because we didn't. But we did, you know what we did do? I bet every single one of these people, you could pick them out in kindergarten. They were helping. We actually like people. That's why we deal with you. We love people, right? So we're helpful. So So we will help you. We're not just, I've never met a recruiter through Kathleen who's going to do all those bait and switches and force you into something that's not right for you, because all we take with us is our reputations, and we care about you. So,
I think just one more thing. I think that's a really good point, though. I mean, it's like, help us help you, right? I mean, that's what we are here for, and we love to talk. And we can, even if we don't have a specific position that's posted, if we know enough about you, we can go find that position or create that position. So it really is important just to highlight those interests, kind of what your dream job is or what you're really good at or really interested in, and just have that conversation.
Yeah, please.
From a technical role, for those of you who are using GitHub, my clients really appreciate when you've already gone in and checked their account and saw the strength and the weaknesses of what they were doing in advance. So I have to say, if that was something that I would list as was impressive, that really impressed both me, who knows nothing about that technology, and my clients who do.
Awesome. Good tip. Okay, so do we have anybody in the audience that's actually looking for a job right now? Okay, so here's some LinkedIn stalkers. If you get some hits on your LinkedIn profile, you'll know where they came from. So, all right. That's right. Right, they don't stop.
I have a question regarding LinkedIn.
Okay, go ahead.
Is LinkedIn a hard requirement here?
Is LinkedIn a hard requirement, was the question.
not for tech. A lot of us have customers that won't let you use LinkedIn.
Okay, so I haven't logged into my LinkedIn account in years, and I have no plans to.
Thank you for saying that, because thank you.
I deleted my Facebook account because I don't want to see Facebook anymore.
Yeah, it's not a hard.
So LinkedIn is not a hard requirement.
So for those of people who are in the recruiting world, the recording world, the question was, is LinkedIn a hard, fast rule as far as networking and getting a job? And it isn't, but realize that any job posting that you see, there is not going to be a little indicator at the bottom that says to connect with the person who makes the decision. If you get through the gateway, you find them on X. So you then have to become a really good expert at the various different communication tools that each one of these recruiters use. Some of them use LinkedIn solely. Some of them use Twitter solely. Some of them use GitHub solely. But there, as I said, there's not going to be some moniker out there that says, hey, if you want to get to step 1 in this process, you need to use Facebook or something like that. The more communication channels that you are conversant in, the more people you can connect with, and at the same time, you're then putting your best foot out there, because they're all searching. They're searching any database out there possible to be able to find you. Most of them don't have the resources to pay for, a job board or something, so they're going to use something free. So if you want to make yourself a little bit more available, yes, I would say be on GitHub, be on Twitter, be on Facebook, be on LinkedIn. That is going to improve your chances. But yeah, you're going to have to deal with the trash that comes through as well.
And I'm going to throw that out there. There are social media aggregators already that recruiters are using that will do what an ATS does, which will rank the number of times the keyword shows up in a search, and then will tell us what social media was posted on. If you're not on LinkedIn, you better be well engaged on some of the other vehicles, otherwise your numbers won't go up. So in the way that I take a look at my candidates, if I'm looking for a particular technology, it'll have 4 stars by that particular technology based on the number of times my tool has found the social media content and that keyword in it. So if you're not on LinkedIn and it eliminates one of those social media, you please be active in one of the others, whether it be Meetup or GitHub or Twitter, anything that puts your numbers up there, because I'm not calling anyone who has less than 4 stars in that particular area.
I was just going to say you can also reverse engineer it. If there's an organization you want to work for, that position, you just reverse engineer what that department is and who the recruiter is, and then you reach out to them. So that's a way to do it without being a social media person if you don't want to be.
Okay.
So the fact that you're here is a good step in your favor.
Turn that one off. Is there a switch on that one? Let's turn that one off.
I don't know.
There we go.
Anyway, there's numerous different avenues that you can take. Don't feel like you're disabled or disadvantaged because you're not on one thing that you're not comfortable with or that you are comfortable with. Does that make sense?
Okay, so do you guys really have 7 seconds to look at each resume? Studies have, okay, so that's not true. So for the tips for those folks out there that are looking for jobs now, what advice can you give them to make their resume or their profile really stand out and capture your attention?
So I think some of it was said earlier. I mean, don't make it a long resume. People aren't interested in a long resume. Get to the point. Say what your skills are and how you're interested in applying those skills, and put it up front. I mean, be creative. It doesn't have to. I mean, chronological is really important, but highlight really what you're interested in. Make that summary kind of pop. How do you differentiate yourself when someone just needs to digest that one page that talks about you?
Well, I think it's already been said, right? So I would say that make sure what you want to do and what you're good at is at the top of the resume, because that's just where our eyes are drawn, right? So put it up there. Say, like, I'm sorry, Kirsten, like Kirsten said, this is what I do, and this is what I want to do. And that makes our lives easier, and then it makes us want to read the rest of the resume.
So I'm going to throw something out here. Just
I think they all have. Yeah, I just turned this off. Can we cut the mic in the middle?
Yeah. Okay. So one thing that's interesting in this space is CTFs and competitions and such. So do not discount any of the competitions that you've been part of, or any of the volunteering or any of the speaking you have done, because that is something that many recruiters, and I'm sort of speaking for the panel, but I want them to chime in as well, is that you have opportunities to showcase your skills in other ways than just your work experience, and that is through competitions. And being sure that you're looking at each one of your competitions from a career development standpoint. Sit down after any of the competitions that you're part of and write out what the problem was that you had to solve. Write out the mistakes that you made, write out the solution that came together and what you would have done differently. But also look at it from a standpoint of what are your, soft skills that you learned. You learned that you were good at, bringing a team together or a leader. Really look at competitions as a way to share your work experience, but then, put them on. I know, Kirsten, you look for competitions, right?
I hope this works. I was going to say, I don't know if I should quote him, but one of the most talented individuals I have ever recruited in my life, his LinkedIn profile says, "I do stuff," and that's all it says. And I don't use most of the resources that are out there for recruiters. 99% of my recruiting happens at conferences, so every space is different. This is where we say, be a human, create relationships, be who you are, and talk to people. We'll get you in touch with the right person.
If I can just add one differentiator is list some accomplishments, and it could be whether you attend or put together a winning team, but differentiate yourself from everyone else in this room by listing the 3 bulleted accomplishments that I, as a recruiter who may not technically understand what those accomplishments are, but share them with my hiring manager to say, you made it easy for me to describe what differentiates you from every other resume that I found.
I was just going to add to that for those of you who are closer to your entry or more junior in your experience, what you've done in school also matters. So highlight those projects or experiences or forums that you were involved with to really highlight, because that experience counts.
So that's a great segue to my next question. Do we have any students other than my middle school son here that are in the room today, or maybe parents of students, right? So here's a question that I want to toss out to the panel. What should I do if I am a student or I know a student and their resume has 0 experience? How can I make that resume pop?
Hopefully they aren't just taking classes, and I hope you have at least a 3.0. If you do, put it on there. If you don't. They'll be concerned. So focus on the content of the classes that you're taking so you can have a good GPA. Take classes that are relevant, and show us that you can do more than just go to your class by joining clubs, by doing competitions, by being in charge of as many things as you can, right? By organizing things. You hear me always using keywords when I talk. Organizing is a keyword, leading is a keyword. And I love that you said, what did I not do well at and what did I learn? That's such a good message. This is one of the top things I say when I'm at schools, when I'm at RIT, when I'm at George Mason. I say, tell me a thing that you didn't do good at, because that's not on your resume, right? And what did you learn? Okay, well, I learned when I build robots and they break midway through the road and then they blow up, I should always have a fire extinguisher with me, right? So safety protocol. Anyway, I love that you said that.
Anybody else want to jump on that one? Kathleen?
So what's sad is that we have a lot of students who are going through cybersecurity programs, but they don't quite know which cybersecurity they want to do. Please don't be that student that says, I want to do cybersecurity because it's cool. Okay, what part of it is cool? Is it SCADA? Is it, pen testing? Is it malware? Is it policy? Do yourself a favor. If you're in a cyber program, please find out what really excites you and what's passionate and what's going to drive your career. And that's another place to do CTFs. If you're a student, really get in part of the CTFs and sort of learn what you like to do, what you don't like to do. And if you're switching careers, CTFs are another really great way to say, I really want to try something else. If you can't get into the competitions, as Kirsten was saying, organizing, leading, being a part of BSides. I mean, many of the BSides volunteers I know on a local basis move up the chain. There actually is a hierarchy in BSides to, finally work at BSides Las Vegas. But those are management skills that are something that you can translate on your resume. Being a student who has worked at an event for 4 years, you've raised money, you've managed people. I mean, believe me, managing volunteers is not easy. If you can say that you managed an event and you managed a series of volunteers, I think you can see all the head shaking. Wow, you've got management potential, and we're going to get you in the pipeline, and we're going to make sure you're going to be trained to do other stuff.
One more really important, and I'm actually thinking of my son who's a sophomore right now in college, and I just said this to him. Do not take the summer off. Do an internship, paid or not. It is experience. I don't care if it's bookkeeping. I don't care if it's accounting. I don't care if it's floor sweeping. Get that experience. Okay? And try to, if you can, do it at one of the sexy companies that everybody's heard of. But if you can't, that other company has just as much experience to offer to you. Way more world relevant experience in the internships than you're going to get in your classrooms most of the time, I think.
I'm just going to add one more thing. In terms of if you're only doing coursework, make sure you highlight the projects that you're working on. I was a part of a team of 4 that developed A and accomplished B. Don't tell me your curriculum. I don't want to read that you signed up for a class and the class was responsible for teaching you how to do cyber testing. That doesn't matter to me. I want to know about the projects you accomplished and how you accomplished them during the course of your classwork.
I think this is something that we've all kind of hit on with our responses, but this is an opportunity for students. Join groups, lead clubs. It's an opportunity for you to network. Come to BSides. Come to, go to some of the other meetups, but make relationships, because at the end of the day, those relationships pay off.
All right, so next question. What part of the job negotiation process, whether it's the initial inquiry, a tech interview, face-to-face interview, follow-up, job offer, negotiation, what part of the process do job seekers frequently mess up, and what is your recommendation on not messing up?
I think there's a theme here. It's just know what you want to do, be honest with yourself, and be honest with us. So if there's something specific that you want to do in your next position, even if it's not in the position description, talk through it with us. This position may not have it, but we may be able to find it for you. And if we have that open, honest dialogue in the beginning, this includes commute, this includes salary. Be honest, not only with yourself, but with us. So that way we don't waste your time, and we can work it out in the long run. Because even if this particular opportunity isn't going to meet that, if we don't waste each other's time and we have a good relationship, then the next one will, or there's a referral, there's a friend I have that's also recruiting for this, and we can help each other out. So.
Transparency is key. Exactly. If we don't know what you want, we can't tell the hiring manager what you're looking for, right? And it's throughout the entire process. Tell us how many other companies you're talking to. You don't have to give us the full details, but the more you tell us, the more we can tell you. And think of us, I know it sounds crazy, but we are your advocate to the rest of the team, or to the rest of the company. We represent you. The other thing is be professional on interviews. We've recently had some very interesting experiences. The best way for me to describe being professional is think of it as a first date. You want to make a really good impression. Just some of the horror stories. Don't ask anybody to smell your breath. And yes, this happened. Please don't comment on the employees in the office.
Good advice.
Well, I just want to follow up on that. There was actually a tech forum on one of the social media, and people were complaining about that they had to wear professional attire to interviews. And they're like, that's not the true me. I'm really much more creative, and I want to be someplace that will be respectful of my creativity and stuff. Okay, seriously, that's fine. We're not saying that you're going to have to quelch your, really pink socks and your magenta shirt and all of it. But let's sort of like meet in the middle. Let's be a little business conservative as we go into the first interview, because then you can say, okay, this is a place that everyone wears button downs, and this is not going to be a place for me. But, you can go to several of these places for interviews, and you'll see that there are other people walking around in t-shirts and jeans, and you're like, okay, but you want to make that first good impression. I can't believe how many arguments I had on Facebook last week. They're like, no, I'm going to wear, my stilettos, and I'm going to wear, the chains and stuff. And it's like, please, can you just put on flats and a suit coat and just be fine? I'm just asking you to do it for like 2 or 3 meetings, and then afterwards you're fine. Anyone else have any interview disasters or?
Show up when you say you're going to show up.
Yeah.
Sorry. Don't overcommit an interview with everybody and then decide last minute you're going to call me and say you're not showing up, because that's the kiss of death. You will not interview with my client again, ever.
And it's a small world, right?
Oh, yes.
This isn't to say that anything they all just said isn't true, but be who you are. Because if you pretend to be something other than what you are, and I don't even own flats. I mean, so if at the end of the day there's something significantly you, and you pretend to be something else, you're your best advocate. We're your agents, but you're your best advocate. And you just kind of screwed yourself you bait and switched yourself if you go pretend to be something that you're not. So obviously be respectful of others' times and things like that. The last interview I went on, and I haven't been on many, but my hair was blue, and I got the job, so.
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest mistakes that I think I see job seekers make is not understanding that this is a long process. A lot of people will say, I'm going to crash and burn my last job, and I have an interview the following Friday, and they think they're going to get hired by the following Monday, and they have rent due, and they have credit cards due, and then they all of a sudden start to get desperate because the recruiter has to go through setting up follow-up interviews. I mean, the typical interview process can be anywhere from 2 weeks to 3 months. I know one company, it takes 18 months. If you don't have that in your mindset of how long this is, you're going to start to get desperate and angry and frustrated, and you're going to take it out on the recruiters. And, like Karen, you've got several steps, right?
Tell people about your steps. So, Booz Allen, you can get through the process fairly quickly, but you can also get through the process taking a longer time. So depending on how you come to us, you will have a phone screen with a recruiter. And what is really important there is that you do portray your skills. Many of our recruiters today, I mean, we all know how fast cybersecurity is changes everything that touches it. And they may not have the skills that you do, and so help them understand what you know so they, again, can really make sure they portray that. You may come to an interview event, you may have one interview, you may get an offer the next day. You also may have to go through multiple interviews because maybe the first time out of the gate, right, the right person wasn't there to speak to you, or your skills are better qualified for another team. But you have to complete the application. Oftentimes what we see is that people say, yes, I'm interested, and they don't take the next steps, and we can't move forward. So it's really important to commit, if you're going to commit and you're interested, to do that in a reasonable time, so we can get you through the process.
I'm not hogging the mic on purpose. So my nickname is Hermione for a reason, because I always have one more thing to say. Only because they're prompting me to think of other things. When she said application, it reminded me of something. Just imagine, and I can hear your eyes about to roll, that there are things that are federally mandated things that we have to be compliant to. So when we say do this thing, it's probably not because we're mean and we want the process to be longer, but if you don't apply for the job, I can't offer it to you because you're not an applicant. So I legally can't offer you the job unless you just fill out the piece of paper. Anyways, just ask. If a step seems silly, or it seems like it doesn't make sense, or it seems like we're being rude, just ask us why and we'll explain it to you, usually.
I'm going to add one more thing. The things that I love about candidates is when they answer the questions that I have, I'll also say, what does this acronym mean? Because it may be the first time I'm recruiting for that skill set, and I'm still learning. And I'll go, what does this mean? And how does this tie into some of the other tools I'm looking for? If you take the time to help me understand that what that tool that you are using is identical to the tool or similar or a competitor to the tool I really needed, then maybe I can check that box saying, the individual has the skill sets. And then you're taking the time to help me educate me as a recruiter so I can ask additional questions. I do not like talking to people who make me feel stupid for asking what I think is a decent question, like help me understand your skill sets that may be new to me. So you can be a great candidate by helping me through that process.
Okay. Question? Yes, question. Go ahead.
So kind of tied what you guys are talking about, can you talk about security clearance requirements and processes, and then when you have to go through if you're hired for a federal contract, and maybe some additional steps that not everybody understands in those instances?
Wait, who wants to take it? Why don't we do Mo?
Okay, so the question was security clearance process, and then what are additional steps if you're working for a government clients. All of mine are government clients. That's all I live in, and 70% of mine require clearance. It takes up to a year for a secret, and possibly longer, and 2 years for anything higher than that. And typically speaking, the only people we're offered to get cleared, specifically at the higher levels, are people who have less than 3 years of work experience. We don't even have the option. It's not even on the table to clear anyone if you've got more than 3 years of experience. So when we say you have to have it, that's why it would make my life so much easier if you didn't have to have it and I could get you cleared. But in most cases, when the company says you have to have it, that's why. The amount of time it takes to get the clearance. In terms of the other steps that we need to take as a contractor, a couple of things where there's very specific applications that we need to have people fill out. There's forms that we need to have them fill out. We need to do background checks. We need to be able to verify employment, because we need to say that you have the experience that you say you have the degrees that you say you have, because labor categories or how we bill back to the government are based on very specific criteria, and we have to be able to defend and show that you have that. And then also, in many cases, it's customer has to see the resume and approve it. So if it's a proposal, there's key personnel, and the winning bid has the key personnel that they look at, and that's who they want on their project. And even contracts we've already won, we already have, sometimes they actually ask for a technical evaluation, where you have to go in and meet the customer on top of the actual company you're working for. So that's another layer for interviews, which could, in fact, make the process a little bit longer.
Good. Good question. Thank you. We have another question back there? Go ahead, sir.
Let me just add on.
Oh, okay. One more. Yep.
Remember, there's a difference between state laws and federal laws. If you want a security clearance, there are federal laws you have to follow. Just because there are state laws that allow certain things, federal laws do not allow them. Get my drift? Really get my drift? Okay. It's in the wind.
All right, I think somebody had a question in the back. Yes, sir.
So what can hiring managers do to make you all more successful?
Ooh, great question. Was that a plant? That's a great question.
I'm so glad you asked. Invite us to the technical interviews. Provide us with technical knockout questions. Teach us about the things we're asking about. Don't just reject. In fact, I've had resumes get rejected that when I went back and followed a technical script with that same candidate and then submitted the technical script to the hiring manager, the person got the interview, right? So again, help us help you. Please, she keeps talking about, wanting to understand technically. So the hiring managers, nobody can help us more than you can understand, well, when I say this technical term, when I say C++, turns out if they actually also know Java, or if they only know Java, turns out that's object-oriented too, and it's going to be okay, right? So I can ask the same types of questions. Please, hiring managers, help us understand exactly what you need, what you like, what works, what doesn't work, and we'll be able to help you better in that way.
I'm so sorry. I was like, a lot more times than not, the same job description, if you were to log in and look for any position, you'll probably get 10 position descriptions that look almost identical. What hiring managers can help us is help us identify sort of what makes that particular job sexier or more attractive than all the others, because we're trying to get applicants to come to us as opposed to apply to all the other positions. So what is unique and different about either the team or the technology or the project? Is this is a one and only project? Is that going to separate us out, or the job description? It helps us create a better sort of messaging to our candidates.
So be okay with answering lots of questions. I think how we get here is because we ask a lot of questions. I know at my company, they have like a badge the first time you go through a recruiting experience with me because I ask so many questions. That's how we can be more effective and help you. I think the second piece is don't get frustrated with us when we advocate for a candidate. Typically speaking, if we're advocating for a candidate, there's a reason. There's something that you've told us that your team is missing or that you need. There's a personality. There's something that we feel like this person can help you with. So don't feel like we're trying to shoehorn someone in because we want this position to be closed. Sometimes it truly is we see something in this person that you don't see on a piece of paper. There's intangibles when you talk to someone, and we're asking you to give them a chance. Do it.
Best thing I've ever heard anyone say.
I think the really good recruiters will expect that, right? They will understand your job, position, project so well that they'll be able to manage through that process. So I think that's a really great point. The other thing is take time up front. You all know your business really well. You sit with the client or your project each and every day. Oftentimes it's not the same day that you're learning that you have a need. So start earlier in the process and to include your recruiting team, because you can make them so much more valuable if they understand and they have time to prep. Some of the skill sets that we're looking for today, it just takes time to find the right people because they're not out on LinkedIn, right? They're kind of hidden under a rock somewhere, and they likely don't want to be found. And so to arm us with all of that information to go have these conversations to attract the talent, it's really important and it takes time.
So one of the things that Sabrina's company does really, really well is that they're out in the community. So if you're a hiring manager and you want to hire some really great people, follow what Endgame does. They're in every single conference that's out there. They are talking to everyone. They're learning on the ground what's going on. And they have the best T-shirts in the industry. But, they actually had T-shirts out in the industry before you even had a product, if I remember correctly. And they had a waiting line. Well, at least according to some of your executives, you had a waiting line for people to come work with you even before they had a product. But go out with your recruiters to some of the events. Be side by side with them and sort of understand the questions they get asked. Because a lot of times the questions that the company or that the candidate is asking are things they don't know, like what makes your team click? What really excites your team about working together? And none of these recruiters can answer that question. But if you have a really killer need and you need a really specific skill set, if they don't know what differentiates that position and working for that team, they won't know how to recruit for it. The other thing that I think hiring managers can do is make sure that when you're in the bidding process for any kind of work, be it commercial or government work, include your recruiters at the front end. I can't tell you how many times recruiters have come through and they said, okay, we have to fill this position in a labor category that's 50% below market rate. If you had told when you did the contract, if you had talked to the recruiters before you even started bidding that proposal, you would have, saved everyone a lot of angst, because everyone at the BD department is undercutting the business, not understanding to fill the labor category, to fill it with really good talent, you need to have a much higher salary.
Don't ignore your recruiter. He or she may seem like a pest, but when you ignore us, we take it as your job's not a priority.
Amen.
Good stuff.
The hiring managers need to also show up to the interviews, right?
Yes.
Yes, right.
Yes.
More of a pet peeve than candidates.
Yeah.
So hiring managers show up. Good question, dilly. Very good, and good content. All right. So one of our last. We've got about 10 minutes left, and then I want to take some additional questions from the audience if they have them. Obviously, everybody in here in this room at one point or another applied for a job and didn't get it. What advice can you give folks that applied for this, this great job? They didn't get it, they're down in the dumps. Should they try and keep in contact with you? How can they kind of rebound and kind of come back from that setback?
Follow-up question. Do you mean applied, like submitted a resume to a system, i.e. black hole, or they applied, were interviewed, and talked to a human being?
You walked them through the entire process and got to the final interview and they didn't get it.
Then yes, at that point you have a relationship with the recruiter, and it does make sense to keep in touch with them. Typically speaking, I'll give feedback to the candidate and say, look, this is why. I won't necessarily go down a really specific path with their interview itself, but I'll explain why they didn't get it, whether it was a technical skill or something else that they were missing. And I absolutely call people back. There's people that didn't get position X, and 6 months later I call them back for position Y, and we've hired them. So it absolutely happens. It's not make-believe. So yes, develop a relationship with the recruiter and still keep in touch with the hiring manager, because both of us matter in that equation.
She's a better recruiter than me. That's probably why they don't let me recruit anymore. But actually, follow-up is super important, right? So in some instances where I have every intention of getting back to you and a little bit suck at it, bug us back too, right? Just remind me, because probably I marked your email as unread with the intention of opening it. And I have 7,000 unread email messages right now. So bug us back.
Yeah.
Oops. Anybody else?
So I would say definitely network with the recruiters. If you clicked with somebody that you interviewed with, but you didn't get the position, you should definitely keep in touch with them. And, if it's every 6 months, you say, hey, look, I just finished my CISSP. I just did this competition. I moved someplace else. I learned something new. It is very important. The Department of Labor says that we're all going to change jobs 10 to 15 times in our entire lifetime. I think in the tech industry, it's going to be more like 25 to 35. You have to have at least 5 to 10 recruiters that you know really well and who can look out for you and that you connect with. Because remember, you're not going to want to have to start this process over every single time you want a new job. You want to have 5 to 10 recruiters who are out there being advocates for you and that you can keep in touch with, because all of these recruiters have other recruiters that they know. And, Karen said it earlier, they're going to refer you. It's also going to be important that they're going to move to other jobs. They're going to move to other places. And now that they know who you are and they know the skills that you have and the new place that they work, they're like, oh my gosh, I met with so-and-so just 2 weeks ago, and here's this perfect position, and I have their email, and I can call them, and I can get them in the process because they already know you have the skills. They have a relationship. They don't have to go through that entire process. They can just put you right in.
I think it also depends where we leave off in the process, right? If you get all the way to the on-site interview, there's a reason why. Just so, like everyone said, definitely keep in touch because things change. You may learn a new skill. We may need a new skill. So it's important that you stay in touch with the recruiters, with the hiring managers, engage with other people in the company. It's okay. I can tell you for a fact, everybody at Endgame, I tell them all that they need to respond to anybody who reaches out to them for any sort of advice or information because at the end of the day, we're all recruiters, not just me.
The one thing, this isn't directly tied to that, but I was thinking about the agency aspect, and Susie, you may want to weigh into this. Many of you might be working with agencies as well as organizations. So Booz Allen, we use agencies, not all the time, but enough that you may overlap. Be honest. Like if you are already talking to an organization, don't tell the agency you're not, because you need both of those relationships, right? So just keep that in mind about the people that you're following up with and truly building those relationships with. And Susie, I don't know if you want to.
No, it's an excellent point. With technology, what it is, maybe 10 years ago you could say, I never talked to that person, but I guarantee you I have notes from every conversation I've ever had with a candidate. So if I need to document it, I have that information, and the same is true for most of the clients. So know that if you're asked specifically, you're better off up front, because if you are submitted, in some cases, by multiple organizations, you're automatically kicked out. There's no second guessing it. Even if you're best qualified, if you're automatically submitted by two companies for the same position, in some cases, that resume is just tossed. So be honest, and then be responsive, and let them know what's going on, and then we would defer to the recruiter who could talk to you first.
So you briefly mentioned the black hole online applications. Is there any more remaining value on the cover letter submitted with an application?
Good question.
Black hole?
We're going to have a battle.
Cover letter.
I'm going to say no. No. If the job requires you to do a cover letter, do the cover letter, because if you don't do it, you're automatically excluded. If you want to provide a cover letter, the recruiter may not, with her 3 to 6 seconds, I'm going to go with that one, I will never read the cover letter.
I'm going to say keep it short. I'm going to say if you don't want to have to keep changing your resume every time to customize it to the specific position, then a very short how about cover message can just say, here's the reason why I'm interested in your company, or here's what I just did, and here's what your position looks like, right?
Karen, you said no?
I'm a no. I'm going to go straight to your resume. That's what I'm going to read. Now, I think for students that are just graduating, I feel, they feel more compelled. I mean, my advice is still, I'm going to look at your resume.
Put it in your objective statement, students. If you're not sure where to put it in your objective statement.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't read resume, or I don't read cover letters also, but most of the recruiting I do is very technical, so I jump straight to your resume. However, if you want my attention, I'm all over social media. Tweet at me, ping me on LinkedIn, or I don't care if you send me a message through Pinterest. I'm probably going to read it a lot more so than I would read a cover letter. Sorry.
So I'm going to be at the other camp just because I have so many customers who are small to medium size, and they're sometimes the recruiter is also the CISO, is also the FSO, is also the HR person, and might be the wife of the CEO, or may be the front receptionist. So yes, people who are doing super technical recruiting may not read a cover letter, but you never know who's going to be on the other side reading that. And if you give them, as Kirsten said, a short message that says, this is why I'm really great for the position, this is why I'm really interested, and these are some of the things, you've really made the job a lot easier for someone who may not be a full-fledged recruiter. And that is something you don't know. I mean, there are a lot of companies who are quite big size, but they have one recruiter who's also the HR manager who has to go back and forth between explaining benefits and also recruiting for the super technical stuff at the same time. There is the black hole, the applicant tracking system. You have to do it. I'm sorry. Do it. It is going to ask for the same information, sometimes 3 or 4 times. It is not that we're trying to do that to really make your life hell. It is to comply with Department of Labor regulations. So every company, wants to follow the regulations, and there are these really complicated systems that are put in place. And yes, sometimes you do get lost in there. That is why it is really important that you've maintained relationships with people and why you're connecting them with them in person at a conference or over various different social media.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. Yes, sir.
Curious from your perspective why the market hasn't adjusted the salary. So we've had a security gap down for a few years, and the salaries raised a little bit, but so I teach at a university, and students tell me I can make more money doing this than security. So from my perspective, I don't see the market adjusting. Like HR is just not like they're only going to get candidates just for what they can. Or am I wrong? Or like who's deciding that?
So if it's in the DC metro area and it's government contract related, those prices were set based on when the contract was written. So a lot of us are feeling the pain for when the actual work, when we won the work, right? So that's what the labor market was at that time. That's one factor. Another is it typically takes hiring teams, hiring managers, an amount of time when the labor market turns around. So now it's a candidate's market and we need to be aware of that. But at the end of the day, the managers still feel like it's not. So it takes time for them to get it and us advocating and saying, no, you need to do this. Again, I'm not being lazy. I'm not just saying, hey, just throw money at the problem. There's typically a reason. So it's a couple of different factors. I'm guessing it's probably another year away from legitimately not being such a hard, right in time for it to go back down. So it's a cross we have to bear too, because we're arguing for it on your behalf. You're saying to us, I want to make X, and we're saying they want to make X, and the manager's saying no.
I think it goes back to the question too that was asked about what can the hiring manager do, to have that conversation up front. If you're saying, hey, I need X, Y, and Z with, a clearance and I need them at, $50,000. I mean, that talent just doesn't, exist, right? So I think it's being really, the internal workings of an organization to make sure you're leading with what that opportunity is or what the value proposition is. How can you get an 80% solution in a candidate opposed to looking for that 100%? So those are conversations that are so important to happen in order to fill the need.
Can I just, as recruiters, we want you guys to take those jobs. We are always thinking, when I open that resume, this is the one. So at some point, everything that we're doing is first thinking about how do we get you in. We're not looking to how to exclude you. So it's that perspective that we are always trying to see and advocate for you. And like you said, we're your advocates first. So know that going into it, we are always looking to see how to make it work.
I guess I was just surprised at the question because in 10 years, the last 3 companies I worked for, almost never is salary the reason the person doesn't take the job. We should talk.
And on that note, it's 3 o'clock. Yeah, how about a round of applause for our wonderful panelists? Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your B-sides.